What if I told you there's a recipe for writing successful stories? That the greatest tales ever told have used it to get people so connected with them that they will happily buy bundles of merch, dress up as their favorite characters, and even tattoo their bodies with things that remind them of it. This method is so powerful that when executed properly, it can make sure that your stories will dominate the mind of millions. The craziest thing is that it's so simple and takes so little time to think about that anyone can use it to create a story worth telling. So in this video, I'm going to use the best cooking film I know to demonstrate to you what this recipe is, how it works, and the way that you can use it in your own stories. But like cooking, before we even get to the method, we need to prepare our main ingredients. How essential are these ingredients? Well, I would argue that without them, you can't tell a proper story. You see, when boiled down, stories are just a unit of change, and change can't happen if you don't have these three things. I'm sure nobody will argue when I say we need a main character, also called a protagonist. But for this protagonist to be story ready, they also need to come with a desire. In Ratatouille, we are introduced to Remy the rat. And while he might be super cute and funny to watch, this story wouldn't mean anything if it wasn't for his desire to cook. Pixar have cleverly paired an animal who has no place in the kitchen with a want which seems near impossible to achieve. From this one ingredient alone, you will already see how the story might be formed. But of course, no protagonist's journey would be complete without something getting in their way. Which brings me on to the next ingredient, the villain, or the antagonistic forces. While it's usually one character in particular who stands against the protagonist achieving their goal, there are also several obstacles that might get in their way. For example, the fact that Remy is a rat and rats are hated by humans is something that will prevent him from becoming a chef. But Chef Skinner, the man who wants to see linguine fail in the kitchen, directly opposes Remy and goes out of his way to make life harder for him. This would make him the main antagonist. That being said, honorable mention for food critic Anton Ego, whose very name seems to suggest that he is the antagonist. But before you dive headfirst into the world of storytelling, there is one final ingredient that you need to prepare. Something that will dictate the way you choose to lay out your story going forward. It is the glue which holds the story together, and that is the truth that the protagonist needs to learn. As I said before, it is essential if you want your story to succeed for you to take the audience on a journey through the eyes of the main character. To do this, you must have your character learn a very important lesson. Something that they will need to know if they ever want to achieve their goals. Remy wants to be a chef, but he is conflicted because he believes that he'll never be able to do this as he is a rat and doesn't know if he can be both at the same time. By the end of the story, he will figure out how to put this doubt aside and make the two worlds work together. But knowing what these ingredients are won't simply help you make a successful story. There is a specific method you must follow to get the best result. And one key thing in this recipe made me realize the final puzzle piece of what makes a story work that I hadn't figured out before, and the impact has transformed my writing completely. But before we get into that, you need to start with the most important moment in the tale, a moment which so many writers have heard of, but so many people get wrong. For a story to start, there has to be a spark. Think about when you order some food. You don't just reach out for your phone at random and call up your favorite fast food joint. For this to happen, you need to have some awareness of the fact you're hungry in the first place. Maybe you saw an advert on TV for the latest Big Mac. Your stomach grumbled, and so you went on a journey to buy that Big Mac and satisfy your desire for it. Protagonists need the exact same push. And no, I'm not suggesting you make them see an advert on TV, though that's sort of similar to what I'm about to examine in a scene from Ratatouille. But what I am saying is that for your character's adventure to begin, there needs to be an inciting incident. All good inciting incidents perform a few key tasks. First of all, they make your character aware of their desire. Until now, they have been living a life without understanding what they want. The inciting incident in Ratatouille has Remy see on the TV that his favorite chef Gusteau is in fact dead, and reveals that the food critic Anton Ego gave him a bad review, which cost him a star. This sows a seed in Remy's head about his desire to help the restaurant succeed again, and establishes Anton as a potential antagonist. Then straight after this moment, the inciting incident completes its second most important task. The human whose house the colony has been living in becomes aware of Remy, and in her attempts to kill him, ends up destroying the place where they all live. Remy then finds himself separated from his family. Now that he is alone, Remy is forced to start the journey towards his desire of becoming a chef. But there is one thing that Ratatouille does which makes a good inciting incident stand out. Something which most average writing ignores when plotting a story. Because the information that we take in gives us a big clue as to how the final act is going to go. It makes a promise that not only will Remy become a chef at Gusteau's restaurant, he will also go head-to-head with the very critic who toppled his hero. By using this moment to foreshadow the end of the story, the film feels all the more satisfying at the end. But building up to this grand finale needs good preparation, which comes in the form of the next point. If the inciting incident sets off the overall story, this next point flips things on their head and ups the stakes completely. It's a moment which will offer a new dilemma to your audience. Until this point, the journey has had some basic ups and downs, but mostly everything is going well. In fact, in some ways, it might feel like the character has achieved what they want to achieve, but secretly, they haven't quite got there yet. You see, they're closer to their desire than they've ever been, but there's something still getting in their way, and that thing is revealed at the very middle of the film. But what is it that's getting in their way? The inciting incident makes them aware of their desire, but the midpoint makes them aware of why they still can't have what they want. In Ratatouille, Remy has just started to adjust to his new life. He's made friends with Linguini and worked out a system which allows him to cook without being found out, but still everything has to be done in secret. It also seems that Chef Skinner is getting closer and closer to working out the truth. That being said, Remy could go on doing the same thing as he is now and almost feel like he has achieved his goal, which is why the midpoint reveals to him exactly why he can't do this. His brother finds him and tries to convince him to return to the colony, but Remy has had a taste of the life he wants, so decides against joining them. However, the true reminder comes when his father reveals that humans kill rats. This highlights the dangers of Remy continuing to work towards his desire. The midpoint is there to reveal a key piece of information to the audience, and that in turn should lift the stakes going into the second half of the story. Your character has what they want, but not what they need to make it work. And the only way to find that is to put things into perspective. But how do you do this? By implementing the next crucial step in their journey. Your character has spent the story avoiding their greatest fear. They're doing a great job of sticking their head in the sand, and now it's time for you to yank it out. Because without this next step, the change you need them to make will appear forced. You don't want them to magically change overnight. You want them to get there in an understandable way. And the truth is that in life, change doesn't always go perfectly according to plan. In fact, it is quite normal for things to get worse before we adapt. When I first moved away from my mum and dad's house and moved into the flat that I started living in, it was really difficult and I struggled. And at first I wondered about whether I should go back. But after that week was done, I started to see the positive things in the change and made one of the most important steps of my life so far. And that is something that every character needs to go through. And storytellers have found that the best way to dramatize this is by including the moment where everything goes wrong. The story suddenly takes a turn and plunges the protagonist to their depths. In Ratatouille, Remy has an argument with Linguini and reacts by fully betraying his trust. You see, until this moment, the midpoint that reunited him with his family has caused him to start stealing from Linguini in secret. But now, in a fit of rage, he gets his family to take whatever they want from the restaurant. Linguini is shocked to find out what his friend has done and kicks Remy out. To make things even worse, the food critic Anton Ego arrives to taste the food and Chef Skinner captures Remy. This is known as the worst point, and it's something that every good story needs to implement. It usually takes place 3/4 into the story and marks a very important all is lost moment. But without what happens next, the story is at risk of falling flat on its face, and it's something that so many writers don't include. It's so rare that I've seen this moment spoken about that in the 16 years I've spent writing, I've only just heard the concept. And it's so powerful that just including this point in your story will transform the way you approach your writing. In many ways, this is what we've been building up to. Everything your character has experienced up until this point has been helping them grow to this very decision. Because this is the final test as to whether they have changed or not. And if you're not including this in your story, there is no true way to measure whether they've learned anything from the journey. This comes in Ratatouille when Remy's brother breaks him free from Chef Skinner's van. Remy must make the quick decision which will define his future. Will he go back to his family or leave them behind and help Linguini save his restaurant. At the start of the story, Remy didn't know about the place that he has been living. He didn't know that he would make friends with a human, or that he was capable of cooking for them, or that he was going to find a way of making those things work out. But now he's experienced all of that, he knows what he has to do. He returns to the restaurant and helps Linguini. This has a knock-on effect, as his father sees him do what he is good at and everyone teams up to help save the day. So what exactly is this technique I'm talking about? It's the point in the story when you must have your character make the most important decision, the one which the whole tale has been building up to. Whatever they choose, it must be something they would have answered differently at the start of the story. For example, given the choice between staying with his family and helping a human, Remy wouldn't have known which would have been the correct choice to make in the opening of the film. But through the story, he has learned the system which works best for him and grown enough to be able to make his own decisions. Doing this not only offers a great level of conflict ready for the big crescendo of a finale, but also reveals that they have changed through action. But this won't work out if you don't follow it up with the next point. This is something I've seen messed up so many times, and it's often the last thing the audience remember, and that is providing a satisfying resolution. But how can you do this? Well, in Ratatouille, Remy discovers a way of combining his two worlds. His family see what he is good at, but he also opens a restaurant with Linguini, which caters to both human and rat, joining the two together. What makes this ending so brilliant is the fact that he doesn't manage to get what he wants. He doesn't save Gusteau's restaurant, but he does learn what he needs. Until your character learns the thing that they need to know, they won't be able to develop into the person they will become. But the thing is, some characters go on very different journeys, and there is one super successful technique I found when watching Avatar: The Last Airbender, and it's something which takes all of these ingredients and makes them work to create a perfect character arc. So don't forget to check out this next video, where I outline the 7 simple steps to create one of the most compelling story arcs I've ever seen.